Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez is going to be joining us in just a little bit to lead a conversation with a woman who's monitored the quality of the Rio Grande, the water quality specifically, about 300-mile stretch of it over the last several years. She's a water quality expert and she actually is a person who lives near the Rio Grande. And she's going to be telling us about a new study that just came out regarding those border buoy barriers that have been placed by both the state of Texas as well as what the plans are for DHS to come in the future. Miss Elsa Hall. So we're going to be speaking with her in just a little bit later in the program. But first, as always, let's go ahead and kick this day off by taking a look at what's trending across the border. Starting with the Trump administration is asking two railroad companies to make sure their crews from Mexico can speak English proficiently. During recent inspections, federal officials say they found operators at the controls of their trains that couldn't speak English during recent visits to facilities at the Texas-Mexico border. Both railroads routinely rely on foreign crews to bring trains over the border to their rail yards inside the United States before switching to American crews. The Federal Railroad Administration told both railroads Friday to re-examine their practices, make sure that crews from Mexico can speak English, and don't operate a train more than 10 miles inside the United States. The railroads say they will work to ensure they are complying with the rules. Remember, earlier this year, the administration mandated similar English proficiency requirements for truck drivers in the United States. So we'll stay on top of this for you and see how the developments happen, and we'll bring them to you both either here on Border Report Live or at borderreport.com. Moving on, a federal judge must decide whether Kilmar Abrego Garcia should return to immigration custody after being free for just a little over a week. Now, the judge ordered his release on December 11th after finding that officials had no viable plan to deport him and that he cannot be held indefinitely. Back in 2019, an immigration judge actually barred his deportation to his home country of El Salvador. His mistaken deportation there in March has become a lightning rod in the immigration debate. Officials now say they will deport him to a third country. On Monday, they will try to convince the judge that he should be taken back into custody pending that eventual deportation. And Homeland Security says undocumented migrants who self-deport from the United States through the CBP Home app will receive $3,000 and a free flight home. Now, DHS says by using the CBP Home app, immigrants will also be forgiven of any civil fines or penalties for failing to depart the country. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem calls the $3,000 a holiday exit bonus and says U.S. taxpayers are generously tripling the incentive for migrants to voluntarily leave the United States. Time now to bring in our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, and our guest for today's program, Miss Elsa Hall.
Hi, Rudy. Hi, Elsa. Welcome. Elsa has been a longtime resident of Zapata County, a member of the No Border Wall Coalition. And as Rudy mentioned, you have actually conducted water quality monitoring studies, and you recently did one last week in Eagle Pass where there are these buoys that have been put up, a string of buoy by the state of Texas a couple of years ago. You were part of this. Tell us about the study. What were you looking for? What did you learn?
I was assisting Professor Dr. Adriana Martinez and her student, Emma Pratt. They are from the Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville, and they've been studying the buoys in that stretch of river there by Eagle Pass. We collected sediment samples and water samples. And the purpose of the study is just to determine the impact of the buoys on the river in that area. It's a relatively short stretch. I believe it's a total of 2,000 feet, which isn't even, half a mile. But regardless of the length, it has had an impact already that we're seeing. Now, the samples that we collected were to determine the change in the size of the sediment particles, and also the water samples were going to be analyzed for the presence of microplastics because, the buoys are made of plastic, and so there's a high potential for that plastic to, as it degrades, break off into the water, and these little microplastic particles become suspended in the water column.
That's really interesting. What we're showing there is some video that I've taken over the years from Eagle Pass, where, as Elsa mentioned, there's a 1,000 to 2,000 foot long string of buoys. Now, this was put up under Operation Lone Star, which is Texas's state-funded border security program. And, you know, these buoys are really big. You can see they're about 4 feet in diameter. It's hard to tell because I'm up on a hill when I'm taking these images. But also they have in between each buoy kind of like a stainless steel. I don't even know how to describe. Some people have said it looks like a saw. It's not a saw. What are they like when you're really up close with them, Elsa?
Oh, yeah, the buoys, they're pretty large. And currently, when we were out there last weekend, you know, they're not really floating. They're not designed for rivers. They're designed for deep open waters. And these buoys, they're all strung together, and they're tethered to these huge cement blocks that are resting on the bottom of the riverbed. And currently, yeah, the buoys are pretty much resting on the riverbed as well. We had to go to buoy number 99 in the stretch before we found one that actually, you know, spun around, that was actually floating. So yeah, and in between the buoys are these metal circular toothed plates, and it's not exactly a saw. Like, people have equated it to saw blades. It's not exactly a saw blade, but they have metal teeth. And so if someone were to put pressure, whether it's human or animal or bird, if with enough pressure, it can cut, you know, skin and injure someone. So
you're there to study the sediment samples, water samples, and looking for plastic particles. You know, you mentioned that it took to buoy number 99 for them to be actually floating. So are they just mired in the mud? Are they just laying on the riverbed? I mean, what are they doing right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. They're just sitting on the riverbed along with the concrete block anchors that, you know, are supposed to be holding them in place. But see, these buoys, they're trapping all the debris that washes down river, trapping the sediment, and they're creating islands. They're, you know, these islands along the buoys, and it's silting in the water, the river on the U.S. side of the buoys, and it's essentially pushing the majority of the flow over towards Mexico. And so a big concern of this is that, you know, our side is getting all silted in, and is it going to impact pumps along the river? Pumps that send water to our water treatment plants, pumps that are used to irrigate crops. They're going to be in this silted side of the buoys. And, you know, of course, sediment in the water column can cause pumps to burn out. But the other question is, are these pumps even going to be able to reach, you know, deep enough flowing water to be able to get the water up to where we need it? So these buoys aren't just impacting the river, the aquatic life, the aquatic ecosystem. They're not just preventing people from crossing the river or preventing people from fishing or kayaking in the river, but they have the potential to adversely impact both our food and water supplies. And it's just crazy how they've seen the maintenance that's required in this short stretch. They've had to drive heavy machinery, backhoes, into the river, which causes more damage. But they need to do this in order to remove all the debris and dredge out the sediment that has accumulated in the river. And so even the process of maintaining these buoys is causing additional damage. And it's a very intensive process. And I can't imagine this maintenance having to be done along hundreds and hundreds of miles of buoys. I just don't understand how they can consider that this is a viable option for border security, given all the maintenance that's required and the destruction that goes along with them.
So what was just announced last week by the Department of Homeland Security and CBP was that they're going to build 66 miles of waterborne barrier in Laredo, in the Rio Grande, and 56 miles of new border wall in Laredo. Laredo has never had border wall. And then also they're talking about adding 63 more miles of waterborne barrier in the Eagle Pass and Del Rio areas. Now, you mentioned this buoy isn't even a half a mile long, so we are talking 66 miles of waterborne. Now, it's important to note that we, the media, have never been told that it will be buoys put in by the federal government. Everyone is expecting it to be. Have you heard different?
Actually, no. Several members of our coalition have been meeting with CBP in the Laredo sector, and they have received confirmation. The waterborne barriers that they're announcing are going to be buoys. So we have received confirmation they will be buoys.
So will they be, do you know if it's going to be the same kind of, very similar to what Governor Greg Abbott put there in Eagle Pass with about the 4-foot diameter? Do you know what the plans are for them? Are they going to be like this string?
They haven't released any construction designs, so we don't know all the details of exactly what's going in. But they did mention it would be similar, and they would definitely be buoys.
But there is concern that this will cause silting, even more silting. I mean, a massive amount of river miles will be affected by this. And so that's where, this study kind of becomes pertinent as to, this new revelation that the federal government plans to spend millions, actually $1.4 billion worth between the waterborne barrier and the new river wall in Laredo is going to be $1.4 billion worth of contracts that they have awarded.
Yes. They just recently announced that they awarded 3 contracts for the Laredo sector. And these are typically, when I look these up, these are all located within Webb County, including wall and buoys. It was 50 miles of buoys, I believe, and they have awarded those contracts. But their plan that they released in December 11th, the announcement for the Laredo sector is 108 miles of wall and 153 miles of buoys. And if you look at their smart wall map that they have on CBP's website, and you look through there, the buoys are going to extend from the discharge side of Lake Amistad all the way down to Brownsville. There's a couple of spots, short stretches that don't include buoys, but it's almost the entire length of the river from Amistad to the Gulf of Mexico.
And we have reported about these 22 miles here in Brownsville when they announced them a few months ago.
I hate to interrupt, but we're going to stop for just a very quick break. We're going to continue this conversation with Elsa Hall when we come back. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Joining me today, our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez, and our guest for today's program, Elsa Hall.
We're talking about new smart wall system, as the Department of Homeland Security calls it, that they have started announcing a few months ago and just added on last week with this new mileage announced in Laredo. I did want to read a quote from CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott, who was explaining why the Trump administration says that this is needed. He says, quote, "Securing our border is key to protecting our country, keeping our communities safe, and making sure our immigration system works the way it should. A border wall with the right technology, a smart wall, is an important tool to stop illegal activity and to help agents do their job, which is critical in keeping America safe." I wanted to bring in Elsa Hall. She's a resident of San Ignacio, which is in Zapata County, just about 40 miles outside of Laredo. You live there on the river. Do you see a lot of activity? Do you see Border Patrol agents? Do you see a need for the waterborne as well as border wall put there in your community?
Absolutely not. The Laredo sector, which includes Zapata County, has historically had some of the lowest numbers of apprehensions and crossings as per CBP's own data on their website. And I have never felt threatened here where I live, where I've raised my two daughters. All my time spent on the river during the course of my water quality monitoring over the past 20 something years as well. Never felt threats. I kayak, we've camped, we swim, we bird watch. I spend a lot of time on this river. And there are better ways to secure the border other than an invasive, destructive wall and these buoys. It's not about border security. It's about keeping those in power to continue in power and lining the pockets of their political donors, these construction companies getting these billion-dollar contracts. It's all about corruption and grift, and it is not about border security. The border wall itself has been breached hundreds of times. They are having to maintain this by, repairing the damage, the cuts in the border wall hundreds of times. It's not going to stop people that are desperate and trying to seek asylum. It is going to stop the wildlife and, the people and disrupt the people who live here. It's going to disrupt our lives. It's going to take out my home personally. And there's just no need for this. If they want to secure the border, use more, modern techniques. Don't use this ancient wall design to think you're going to secure your country. And it's just a horrible racist monument, and it should not go forward. And whatever walls are out there should come down.
Let me add that part of the smart wall that the Trump administration is touting supposedly has technology. And like we mentioned, they haven't specified to the media that this waterborne system will be the buoys, but everyone is expecting. I have written so many emails requesting specific information. We are expecting it will be similar in nature. And earlier, right before the break, Elsa confirmed that they have been told, she's a member of the No Border Wall Coalition, that by CBP out there in Laredo, that it will be some form of buoys. You mentioned, let me unpack a little bit about what you mentioned. You said political, and you mentioned people that are aligned with the Trump administration. Fisher Sand and Gravel was one of those mentioned Thursday that received $740 million worth of contracts there to build in Laredo new waterborne as well as wall construction. Tommy Fisher, the owner, built the private border wall right here in Mission, Texas, about 3 miles long, which was crowdsourced. Part of We Build the Wall, a debacle that didn't work. And ultimately, there were lawsuits filed, and Steve Bannon was charged. And he ended up paying, Tommy Fisher paid millions out of his own pocket to build a little section of private border wall. Is that an example of someone that you're saying really has no business building where you live and disrupting what you call wonderfully peaceful lands?
Yes, exactly. That's a perfect example of the type of people that are receiving these contracts. And after Fisher has demonstrated the corruption and the grift that and the inefficacy, the inadequacy of that wall itself that they put up, it started eroding right away, huge gaps under the foundation. It's just for them to award that company these contracts, it speaks volumes to the corruption and the grift that's involved with this process.
Now, the wall is still, the private border wall is still standing. It does have, they have kind of reinforced the bottom a bit. I check out there often to see how whether it's eroding or not. There had been lots of complaints about it. It's built right on the river, whereas other border wall structures are a bit set back. And I'm assuming that in the Laredo, Ignacio, Zapata area, they're also planning on being a bit set back from the river. Do you know exactly where they're planning on building?
Well, all we know is the path of the wall alignment and then the 150-foot enforcement zone on either side, which is not shown on their smart wall map. But we have confirmed, again, with Mr. Enriquez, that it does include the 150-foot enforcement zone on both sides. So if you just follow that path, you can get a general idea of where it's going. And it is fairly close to the river in most areas of our sector. And in some places, I mean, it's going through pump stations for like the water treatment plant in Laredo. It's going right across their intake pumps. So I'm not sure if there's going to be any adjustment. I imagine there will have to be some adjustment when they actually get out and see and survey the surroundings. They're going to have to make some adjustments because it's just not possible to put it in these places where they have it now, unless they're willing to take out water plants and things of that nature. So, yeah.
Do you think your home will be south of the border wall when this is all said and done?
Actually, the wall goes right through my property, right up against my home. And so I'm not sure. I don't know how that is going to work out. Are they going to, take out my property for the enforcement zone that's associated with the wall? Will they move it over a little bit to avoid having to do that? And like I said, I only have a couple of acres. I don't have a huge ranch. So any part of my property that is destroyed for this wall, the whole thing is rendered useless, as is my home.
Before we let you go, have you been approached and asked, for eminent domain for them to take some of your property? Has it gotten to that stage yet?
No, they have sent the notification letters to those of us in the path of the wall. I spoke with some other people here in San Ignacio, and it's only those that are in the path that have received these notification letters. But the next step will be the request to sign the right of entry documents to allow access for surveys. And then there's a second right of entry to actually do the construction. And so the point is, do not sign any of these right of entry documents, because even though they're just going to do a survey, you make it that much easier for them and that much faster if you let them in just to do a survey. So I don't plan on signing any agreements to let them in.
So we may see you in court documents soon.
You just very well could.
We've been speaking with Elsa Hall. She's a water quality expert and happens to live right by where the federal government is planning to put some new border wall. And we've also been talking about a new study that she took part in regarding those border buoys and the impacts they're having on the Rio Grande and surrounding areas. We appreciate you being here today, Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Elsa.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Got one more headline to tell you about. This weekend, dozens of residents and immigrant rights activists gathered for a posada in Harlingen, Texas, which is in the southernmost part of the state, right here where we're coming to you from live. Traditionally, a posada is a reenactment of the travels of Mary and Joseph searching for a place to give birth to Jesus. Now, Father Brian Strasburger says that is what migrants are doing when they come to the United States to find a safer place to live.
It seems like a very relevant event to celebrate this year in particular, as I think about so many migrants who have come to our country seeking rest, seeking safety, fleeing violence, seeking opportunity for themselves and for their children, and instead are being denied that through this policy of indiscriminate mass deportation of people that we see through the migrant enforcement that's happening in our country.
Now, Father Strasburger says the Trump administration is not just targeting dangerous, violent criminals, but also separating and detaining families. Kind of goes hand in hand with what we talked about last week, those several nativity scenes, which traditionally show the birth of Jesus in the manger surrounded by the three wise men, his mother Mary and Father Joseph, being replaced with signs that says ICE was here and the baby Jesus being removed from the manger in those nativity scenes. We're seeing more and more of this, especially during the holiday season here. So we're going to stay on top of this and bring you any more that we find, not just here in the Rio Grande Valley, but across the nation. As I mentioned, those different nativity scenes we've seen in the last month or so. We've seen them out of Chicago, the suburbs of Chicago, all the way as far as Massachusetts. Massachusetts and California. So it's definitely something that the Catholic Church, especially with the latest message from the Catholic Conference of Bishops, has been talking about for some time now. Well, that is going to do it for today's program. We'd like to thank Elsa Hull one more time for joining us, and of course our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez for bringing us her reporting today. My name is Rudy Mideles. We'll see y'all next time.